So what's the danger then if we experience trauma of some kind and we think it's our fault? In other words, if you have like severe guilt about something, even if it's undeserved guilt.
We tend to be more crushed, which is thinking that we don't deserve to be even alive.
Yeah, that's a big part of it there. That you can start to suffer from such guilt. And do you have reasons to feel guilty?
No.
Really? None of you are human, huh?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Yeah, we've all got reasons to feel guilty. And I know that, and I asked you that question, I understand that it's like, you know, it's that hammer on the knee when you go to the doctor's office, that there's the impulse to say, no, I don't have any reason to, no, you if you've done anything in life, I mean, if you've done anything of substance in life, you've done some things for which you should feel guilty, probably. Everybody has. Now, of course, some people have done more than others. I don't know, I feel like Hitler's got some things to feel bad about, you know? And I'm not saying that you're Hitler, but you are you. I'm not saying you're not, but I'm saying that you are you. And so you have this thing that kind of looms over you. Now, and that's if you're thinking about it. Now, the question becomes, what do you do with that? The question becomes, what do you do with that guilt? You've got a couple of choices. You can either let the guilt stop you because, as Dave was saying, I'm a piece of crap, I'm miserable, I don't deserve to be happy. So you can use that guilt in such a way that it's now self-destructive to you. Or you can use the guilt in such a way that it should linger with you a little bit to remind you about how you don't want to have that happen to you again. It's kind of like if you step out, I don't know, let's say you just decide that you're going to test lux, you cover up your eyes, and you step out into traffic one day, and then you get hit by a car. And then you spend a few months recovering. The memory of that pain should remind you not to do that ever again. Now, that shouldn't stop you from crossing streets again, because you can understand that the reason that you got hit was because of a series of things. You covered your eyes, you stepped out there without looking, all of this. But you should realize that you can still cross the street, just look both ways and not step out in front of cars. You can still live your life and have a little bit of that tinge of guilt just to remind you about what you don't want to do again in the future. If you hurt someone's feelings and you feel guilty about it, it should remind you. There should be a little bit of a reminder in the back of your head whenever that instinct comes back up. So for example, let's say that you have a good friend and you were talking behind their back. You're saying negative things behind their back, and then they found out about it. And then you had like a hard period because you really do care about them. And maybe the trash that you were talking, you didn't really mean it. Maybe you were just talking. You know, you're just talking. And so if the person has a hard time trusting it and you rebuild it, and then the next time an opportunity comes up where you can talk trash behind this person's back, that should stop you. You go, oh, I don't want to feel that again. I don't want them to feel what I did before. I want to make the world a better place. The other, of course, alternative is, well, you know what? I don't deserve to have friends because I just talk trash behind people's backs, so I'm going to go this world alone. I'm going to be miserable and live in a van down by the river. You've got these two choices that you can follow with guilt. It can either make you better, hopefully a better person, or it can make you a worse person. And of course, I guess there is one more over there where you can be so self-deprecating and hate yourself so much, and now you just say, well, I'm a piece of crap, so I'm just going to live like a piece of crap now. And you make yourself even worse. You see that kind of stuff happen like with regards to, you see that kind of stuff happen like with regards to cheating, where someone will get cheated on, and they'll say, you know what, I got cheated on, so therefore, you know, all men ain't shit. All women ain't shit. And so now I'm going to treat them this way. And now that person starts to behave in a way that that's not really who they are. But they make themselves into that. What that therefore means is that the person who hurt you has more control over your behavior than you do. Because you're just like, I'm just doing this because I'm reacting, then you're not being thoughtful. Because whatever you do on Monday, you're going to have to give an account for on Thursday or Friday. You're going to have to give an account for later in your life. We all pay for what we do. Some sooner, some later. But we do all end up paying for what we do in one form or another. It doesn't mean that you're going to get caught, but if you're somebody who's serially doing that, well, then that means that now you have trouble trusting anybody. And so now you're going to destroy your relationships. And not just your romantic relationships, all your relationships in general. You know? So you have to be careful about how you process these feelings, how you process these experiences. And so I asked about this thing about triumph and tragedy because there is a sense there, like Michael was saying, that we want there to be some sort of a level of desert when somebody's successful. We look at somebody and we don't really like it when someone, good example, a friend of mine used to work as a bodyguard for a guy, I don't know the guy's name. He owns Formula One cars, you know those race cars? Yeah. Him and his wife own these cars, and they spend 6 months out of the year in London and 6 months out of the year in Los Angeles. They split their time between, they're from London. And my friend was driving him around one day, and this guy is just a real miserable piece of garbage. I mean, when you're trying to work for this guy, good example, the guy fired one of his bodyguards because he sent the bodyguard to go get ice cream for him. And the guy went and got ice cream, and he gave him like they have like a freezer pack, I guess the guy likes ice cream. And the guy came back with, he just told the guy to get sprinkles, and the guy came back with rainbow sprinkles. And he fired the guy because he's like, who eats rainbow sprinkles? Chocolate sprinkles are the only real sprinkles. So he fired the guy because he got the wrong sprinkles. He's this kind of a guy. And he's explaining about how he has these really high standards because he's achieved so much in his life by having these high standards. And so the guy was a billionaire. So my friend was working for him, and one day my friend was driving him around, and he was explaining to my friend, he says, you can do this too. I did this. And he explains about how he only inherited $300 million from his dad. And he took that $300 million and he made it into $1 billion. Did this guy earn or deserve his $1 billion? You remember, because you guys are all going to inherit $300 million from your parents, right? Yeah, we're all going to. Yeah. So the question is, what do we do with our $300 million? You look at a guy like that, and you can almost, if he genuinely started with nothing, if he started his story that he was homeless at 17 years old or 16 years old, and he worked his way up, you can almost forgive the fact that he would fire someone for the sprinklers because his standards for perfection would be so high, you can see, okay, that's how he got to where he is. But if you realize that with $300 million, the guy could have made a whole bunch of mistakes and didn't really earn or deserve it, because you can realize that he probably had lots of other connections and things all along the way that got him to where he is. So we see a person like that, and we despise them. We see someone who starts with nothing, and they come up, we love them. Until they're successful, of course. Then we hate them if they're successful for too long, because we hate it when our friends become successful. So we like this tragedy, and I would suggest to you that maybe one of the reasons we like the tragedy is because it's something that we can all relate to. I won't ask you to raise your hands, but I wonder how many of us have had some sort of a great triumph in our lives, and we can look at our great triumph and compare it to somebody else's great triumph and go, I can relate to that person because I had a great triumph just like them. It takes a special person to have a great triumph. It just takes a person to have a tragedy. You just have to have a pulse to have a tragedy. And having a tragedy is what kind of connects all of us. I wonder if any of you know that person who does the one-up game. Like you're sitting around, maybe you're having a bad day, so you'll say something about how, I don't know, you're leaving for school in the morning, and I don't know, there's traffic, there's road construction, and you're sitting in your car and it was hot, and your parents were angry because there's traffic, and you started the day off badly, and they're like, well, at least you have parents, mine are dead, I'm an orphan, or whatever. Like, no matter what you're going through, they're always going to tell you about something worse that they went through another time. And then maybe you can get together with a nice group of people and start to do that. My friends and I used to do that, but we used to make up the whole thing. Like one person would just say about how, like I need to get a new pair of shoes, and someone would be like, a new pair of shoes? Wow, you're actually getting a new pair of shoes. I've never had a new pair of shoes before. Every pair of shoes I've ever had had been used. And then the guy's like, used? How'd you get them? Did you drive over there? Oh my God, you had a car growing up? We didn't. And then it, of course, gets to the point of the guy saying, wow, you guys are just lucky that you guys have feet to put shoes on. As you can see, I have no feet. So you always go further and further, just trying to see who could brag about having no work. And by the way, these are the times in which we live. If you're not a victim today, you feel like you have no social cachet at all. We don't celebrate triumph the way we used to. We celebrate victimhood and failure, and we genuinely get these. I'm not bullshitting. We get these emails from yeah, why not? Screw it. We get these emails from teachers that are on our email chain who will say things like, you know what, we have to celebrate the fact that some of our students just showed up today, and for them, that's a big victory. Really? Walking in a door is your victory. That's your triumph. It's like, well, yeah, and then granted it was 45 minutes late and they were carrying a Starbucks, but you know what? Mental health. Because you guys have been through so much the past. Did you want to talk about it? Is that important in your life? And I know some of you are sitting there just like, oh my God, it's so insensitive that he's saying this, but I'm sorry, truth is not sensitive. I don't think you guys are weak. I think some of you guys are challenged, of course. You guys go through some difficulty, but if I thought that you guys were weak, I'd be here every day. All right, guys, take out a sheet of paper. We're going to do a mental health check. I have to make sure that everyone here is doing okay. I'm sure you have, I know that some of you have those teachers, and maybe you like it, but just to understand the message that's being sent there, that you're so weak that you have to be checked in on constantly. Because if you're not, well, who knows what you could do. Maybe something's going to happen like, I don't know, you're going to not turn in an assignment, and it won't be your fault, it'll be society's fault. It'll be the fault of the world. And by the way, maybe that is true. Maybe it's not your fault, but here's the tragedy of it. You still have to live with the consequences of that. Tall people do better in life, by all objective measures. They earn more money, they live longer, all of that. You're being happier. And so if you're born short, is it fair? I don't know if fair plays into it. But the truth is that you have to live as a short person, so you got to figure that out. I know. So, I'm sorry, you got to figure it out. Some of you are born, and by the way, if you're born tall, you also, by the way, are going to have more joint pains than short people. So at least there's that. So stay low to the ground, stay strong, and you'll be okay. Some of you were born with, I don't know, like higher IQs than others. Some of you were born into families with more money than others. Some of you were born into families, some of you were born into families. Some of us were not. You know? Some of you, I don't know, some of you know your parents, and then, you know, some of us are still waiting for our dad to get back. I'm still convinced all of our dads are hanging out together. I mean, you're going to bring that note back, but it's going to be expired. But the fact of the matter is that we have to live the life that we have. You can't live the life that you dream of. At some point, we have to give up our hope for a better past. Because we have to live the life that we presently have, not the one that we wish we had. And if we occupy our minds constantly with the lives that we wish we had, we can never possibly be satisfied with the ones that we do have. Because, by the way, the lives that we wish we had, I don't even know if you would be happy if you had that life. Because if it's true what we always say, that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, which Nietzsche said, and when Nietzsche said it, he said, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. He didn't say, what doesn't kill us makes us all stronger, because that would be a lie. What doesn't kill most people makes them weaker, makes them jaded, makes them hostile, fills them with guilt, and it degrades on us. It has to be a personal choice that what didn't kill me here has to make me stronger, not push me back into a cave so that I'm afraid to come out again and face it. But it has to be something that draws me out of the cave to face those things, because, stop me if you've heard this before, life is suffering. We don't get to choose not to suffer. But if we're fortunate, we can choose what we're going to suffer for. And that's why we have to find something that makes the suffering worthwhile, that helps us to transcend all of the suffering. So what is the thing in your life that makes your suffering worthwhile? If you have a clear idea of what that is, then that means that you have a why. And if you have a why, well, then you can get along with some kind of a how. You can find a way to do it. Some people have, like a lot of people, I'm sure you have parents or relatives, people who don't really like their jobs, they hate their jobs, but they do it every day through the suffering, because what makes the suffering worthwhile is that they provide for their families. Whatever that level of suffering is. Right now, you guys go through school, and there's a certain level of suffering, we might call it, the fact that you have to come, you have to sit at the desk, you have to do all this work. But the thing that if you can keep your mind on the why, because I believe that somehow this will lead to a better future for me, and not just for me, but if you're planning on having children someday, the decisions you're making today are setting up your children for the world that you're going to bring them into tomorrow. And so it's not just about you, it's about your children as well, if you plan to have them. And so the decisions you make today, maybe that's the thing that can help you transcend the suffering. And by the way, that might take a lot of faith, because you might not see how finding X in your algebra class is going to help you have a better tomorrow. I'm sure many of you don't understand how figuring out what Jocelyn Murray is saying here is going to help you have a better tomorrow. I'd ask you to have faith and trust that it's going to. I wouldn't give it to you otherwise. The reason for it is it helps you develop something that you're going to have to be able to do, asterisk, if you want to have some level of success in life. Because I don't know what you're going to have to be able to do in 10 years. I don't know if you're going to have to be able to code. I don't know if you're even going to be driving cars in 10 years. But one thing I imagine you're going to have to be able to do is think. And that's what we're doing here. We're trying to figure some things out, get to the bottom of some deep issues, understand yourself. because that's going to be the fulfilling life. And that means to understand yourself through all of your tragedies, also understand yourself through all of your triumphs. Hopefully see the connection to that, so that, God willing, at some point we can unbalance that, so that our triumphs can now outweigh our sufferings and our tragedies. Questions? Yes?
Is there like any person that tries to like make themselves suffer even more, and then
Yeah. You mean like a famous person? Or no, I'm asking.
like purposely suffer themselves?
Oh yeah, lots of people do that. That's part of the problem with this, is that people can feel so guilty that they start to make themselves suffer more because they feel like they deserve it. But the problem with it is that this is a person who's not trying to overcome that suffering or become stronger from it. They're trying to punish themselves. There's a philosopher. I feel like we might have done a quote from this person. I mentioned him earlier, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah.
And so, what the hell? N-I-E-T-Z-S-C. Anyway, Nietzsche.
Yeah, we did.
I could not remember how to spell Nietzsche. Yeah. I feel like I'm not going to be here in a few years. I feel like, I don't know, man, I feel like something's warning me. Anyway.
You gotta see.
Yeah, I did. Right here, right?
No, you mean the SNH.
Yeah, that's the thing, right here. Right where I had that space. That's the thing, I knew I'm missing something there. That's why this space there. And my mind was just going like, Q, it's a Q.
Me.
Nietzsche. And this is Nietzsche's whole philosophy. Nietzsche argues that we should seek out suffering, because suffering is the thing that makes you stronger. And if our goal in life, if the goal of the animal kingdom is to be the best, is to make yourself as strong as possible, to be the strongest lion, to be the strongest turtle, whatever that looks like, but certainly at least the one that's most adapted to survival, then you have to seek out tragedy that way, and difficulty and struggle. Because at least then you're seeking it out on your own terms. The hard ones are the ones that happen to you when you're just walking down the street on some idle Tuesday. When those tragedies hit you, you're not ready for them. When you can seek them out, now you can kind of seek out your own challenges to make yourself stronger. It's like, I mean, I guess in some silly way, you go out every day and maybe you run a quarter mile, and then you get better at that, so then you run half a mile, then you go from half a mile to a mile, and then you go from a mile to 3 miles, and then from 3 miles to 5 miles, and then people are like, oh my God, why do you run away? Why do you run? And then the zombie apocalypse hits. And you're able to run 5 miles away from the zombies, or whatever. In other words, something happens in life that you've been challenging yourself every day, and then a weird thing happens. You've hit this peak of challenge, and then that turns out to be the skill set that you need in some circumstance. If you didn't have the skill set, it would never occur to you that you needed it. It's like when people say, God, why do we need chemistry? I don't know. And you know why I don't know? Because I don't know chemistry. But I do know people who know chemistry, and I ask them, like, how often do you use chemistry, genuinely? And they tell me, almost every day. You would never know that if you didn't have access to chemistry. But if you're a chemist, if you have access to chemistry, then you're going to use it every day. It's like, when are we ever going to have the skill to figure things out? Geez, I mean, obviously for myself, it's like 50 times a day. I have students who will come to me and say things like, Scanlon, and I go, yeah, so they go, I was looking, and there's like something with like, I don't know, it's like a 0 or something. I'll sit there and go, I'll think to myself, okay, first off, stay off the drugs, right? So good reminder. And I got to figure out what the hell you're talking about. That there's something with a 0, what is that? I have no idea, you know? And I'm exaggerating that, but not too much. I do get stuff, I get emails from people who will just say, you know, they don't tell me who they are, they don't tell me, or like they'll send it to me in a subject. You know, in the subject, I'm like, my God, don't be that idiot who sends me like, oh, I should have actually, maybe I should, oh, yeah, why not? I may have gotten some of those from anybody in this class. If so, that's what I thought about you. Don't send me an email with all of your text in the subject and then nothing in the email. So I open the email, I sit there and I go, this is a Rorschach test. There's nothing on this screen. I have to figure this out. This is a puzzle, you know? And then you might be like, oh, why can't you just do it right? Why does the whole world have to bend because you're incapable of following instructions and doing things properly? Because that's what we expect. oftentimes. You know why? Because you've had it hard. So I can't expect you to do things right. Of course I can. Because you're better than that. You're stronger than that. And the only reason that you're not doing it right is because you're making a mistake that has to be corrected. That's all. It's not because you're stupid. It's not because of any of these things. But if you're allowed to do these things improperly, then that's how you learn you're supposed to do them. And then it becomes a shock that the world doesn't bend to it. So, yeah, there are people like this, to answer your question from like 10 minutes ago. There are people who do, and it's not just Nietzsche, there are people who generally who do it, oftentimes we don't even know it. We just do it. And of course, anybody who's in the gym is doing that. Anybody who's challenging themselves is doing that. Others?